Alright, well, finally, the time has come, and my yard has suffered. It's a foot tall out there right now, but this thing is about to finally go out on the road. Let me show you a few things I got going on here. So I've got fuel pump wired up temporarily. This is how it's going to be back here, but when it gets up to the front of the car, it's in my mess of temporary wiring for tuning up there, and it will go on a relay beside the battery under the hood when done. As of right now though, it's just where I can plug it into the cigarette lighter up there, just to run the pump. I've got brakes to finish up on the back of this, and I'll show you where I have to modify the torque arm. I don't know if you guys can see the pink there on the torque arm. Yeah, there it came into focus. Those pink marks on the torque arm right there are where I need to trim the torque arm to clear the sway bar that goes right over top of it. I got to do some creative changing, because I don't want to lose the structural integrity I've got, because that is the main bar of that I've got to cut into. But I got an idea on how to fix that. The suspension doesn't travel very far, so that shouldn't be too much of a mod. I should just have to make a little C-notch and brace it back up. As of right now, I got my tack. I've got the boost gauge sitting under the wiper where I can see it flying down the road, and I've got the air-fuel ratio sitting here ready to go. The floor patches are done. It was a 4 license plate and a half a roll of foil tape fix, but there's now a floorboard that your foot won't fall out of. This is part of next year's repair. No structural damage, no structural rust, just one big hole. And then I've got, we were going to finish off the wide body part of the back of the fender this year, but what I'm going to end up doing is just pinning it back underneath the car here, and we're going to leave this be until next year, partially because the donor fenders I had for the extra length turned out to be totally rotted down here when I took them off the car. So the old fenders off of this car are pretty well shot down here, and there's not going to be any fixing that. So I had to go a different direction, and I don't have time to finish that. However, the front of the car is done. I have to weld up some stanchions. As you see, those stanchions don't reach anymore because the front of the car is now 4.5 inches wider across the chin spoiler. And then that seam is going to get blended in down there. I tastefully took a section of the bumper out for a little more airflow in here. We put the chrome bumper back on it, although I did do the modifications to lighten that bumper up a lot, as well as the bumper mounts, mostly to offset all the weight that we just put in the front of this. Also, as of right now, I have everything mounted permanent. We have the intercooler bracket mounted, the supercharger is mounted. I'm working on a modification for the tensioner because I'm having tensioner issues. I didn't think that was going to give me too many issues, and then it started to back itself off, so I got to do something with that. And eventually, once this is tuned, I have to make sure I run the fresh air hose from the back of the inlet side of the supercharger over to the hole in the valve cover back there for the breather. Keep the crankcase pressure at bay, what the PCV that valve doesn't pick up. And that eventually will probably be where the oil separator goes in line. I got to double check fuel pressure, but as of right now everything looks good. When I rev it, everything stays fine, so unless I go down the road and I find out I'm losing too much fuel, then I'll bump the pressure up. If not, so far it's happy. I haven't started it but just for a second today, because I've been trying to get everything buttoned up. I got the power steering rack mounted. It is in manual mode, and even with these big tires, it really doesn't steer too hard. It is a faster ratio. Aside from that, you guys are about to see this thing fire up. So let me get you on the camera, or let me get you on the tripod here, and then we'll get this thing fired up. All right. Make sure you have to do this. It's like a rule. You get in and just click, 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 click every time. Let's see, make sure I've got fuel pump. I'll be so glad when that's on a relay and I don't have to worry about it anymore. Hey, not bad. Now, of course, it doesn't have a choke, so I have to sit here and hold it just about 1,500 RPMs to keep it going. And it's going to run a little rich right now because I'm in a transition circuit because I'm at 1,500 RPMs. Once this thing has enough heat in it, I can drop it into idle, and that should rich, or that should lean back out just for the idle circuit. Let's see what it does here. Got good oil pressure. We're charging well. And you can see now that we're idling, we're getting into the 13s. I don't particularly want to get any leaner than that, although you can hear the blower surge. And every time it surges, you're going to see probably close to 14. Sometimes a 14 will pop up there, and that's normal. I can tune that out as I go, but right now I'm not too concerned with it. Got, oops, my tack just fell off the dash. Just sitting up there. The MSD box is sitting in there. Of course, the RPM module is accessible. It's back here, out of the way. The RPM module that's in it right now is for 6,000 RPM, so we've got to go down to Jigs and get one for 5,500. It didn't come with one. And that's where I'm going to keep it, because I don't think we're going to need to rev it any higher than that. Should be no need to rev it any higher than 5,500. But yeah, so they went for a car with a big cam in it. Superchargers really tame a big camshaft. This thing had a lot choppier idle at this particular RPM before the supercharger. I'm gonna give you a peek under the hood. I'm gonna lay this on the floor so I don't break it. It should be fun. Get this hood down here and take a look at the nose there. Nothing subtle about this car all of a sudden. Absolutely nothing subtle about this car. This thing's going to be a blast. Alright, well, it is nighttime now. Man, I am dragging. So close, so close. Let me show you what I got left and some things I'm doing last minute here, trying to get done. But here, check this out. Okay, so we are using the Chevette brakes on the S10 axles. So two things have to happen. The hub diameter has to increase by a lot. I'll show you here. We'll do this one-handed. Oh, 1 second. There we go. Okay. So that hub had to increase a lot to fit the S10 axle. Now the other thing that has to happen is that ridge on the inside of the drum is what centers the drum to the hub face. What I have to do now is I have to turn S10 axles from, I think, 153 millimeter down to 134 right here. Either way, it's 22 millimeter total difference in diameter, so 11 millimeters are coming off the outside edge of it to give me 22 total across. So I've made tools because I had tools that were ordered and didn't show up. This was done with a spacer I had. It just so happened to fit the hub diameter there. I marked it and then I routed them out with that by hand. That took forever. But they're pretty close to perfect. The exception of a couple places, because you know, trained eyeball can only be so accurate. Now, the cool part, I've discovered that a crank pulley washer happens to be the same diameter as the inside of these S10 axle hubs right here. So I cut notches to fit these keys, stuck the bolt down in there because it just so happened to be the same depth, and welded a couple teeth on it just to help keep it located. That goes down in there, locks in there real nice and solid, keeps it centered. And I'm using the same axle tube I used to do the stud re-drill. Now, this outside edge, right to the very edge of the old bolt holes, is my 11 millimeter. And that will spin like that all day. So you can see what I'm going to be doing here in a little bit. Besides destroying my garage because I got stuff falling off everywhere, but there we are. And all this was an old 1/2-inch drive extension, cheap Chinese one, that I cut off and I used a 19 millimeter socket on it. This is the similar setup to what I use for polishing cranks on here. I got a bearing setup that goes in the middle of this that the crank's set into that I've made, and I run one of these bolts into the end and it keeps it centered and it turns it, and I can polish the journals.
all kinds of fun stuff. So that's what I've got to do to finish this rear axle up. I got to cut these down. Once I've got those cut down, the brakes can go back together, and everything back here is done. It just bolts back together. I'm going to have to go to a full height spring back here for the year because we didn't get a chance to radius the wheel wells for the tires. And I'm sure you've seen they stick out a little ways. But everything else is done. So just waiting on this to get done. I got to weld the sway bar mounts to the axle tubes, but I ran out of time to grind the tubes before it got late because it's like 11 something at night right now. I'm sure my neighbors already really pissed at me because I've been running the grinder late in here with the door closed, but I've got everything marked. So I just have to grind, weld, paint it black, put it back. Everything's sitting here ready to go back in. And then I gotta swap. What do I gotta do back here? Oh yeah, I gotta swap these out for regular washers because the factory safety washers don't clear the body of the shock. And oh yeah, I gotta install the fuel pump bracket up there because that's all done now. And we're driving it. Alright, so I'm shutting down for the night. I've got to hit that thing early in the morning. We're driving it tomorrow for sure. I promise. So, in the meantime, I'm going to get some sleep. I'm going to get on this thing bright and early. And the next video you guys are going to see, hopefully, will be that thing laying some fresh 11s on the street somewhere. Not public roadways. Can't do that. However, I may make a trip to Mexico. Be a short trip. Got a lot of cleaning to do. And if all goes well tomorrow, I got a neighbor that wanted to take a ride in this thing too. So, and then that one back there. Yeah. That one. That one's coming in here tomorrow as well. Since this one's going to be in the street, we can finally get Aaron's car in here, get it up on jack stands, and get it started. Because that's been long awaited. That was supposed to be done by the 30th. I got graced a little bit of extra time. So I'm going to make the best of it. You guys are going to get yet another video. We're going to cover how to do a 5-speed swap. So in the meantime, stay tuned. Keep the shiny side up.